Mike Caldwell's defense so far has answered the call. We'll tell you how and why and who and all of that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Everybody, and welcome again to another edition of Locked On Jaguars. I'm the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, Tony Wiggins, and here it is your team every day, and we always thank you for making us your first listen. Quick reminder that we're free to subscribe to on our YouTube page. Make sure you tap in, hit the like button, hit the bell. Once you subscribe, you hit the bell, guess what? You get notifications anytime we drop an episode on YouTube, and if you listen to audio podcasts, wherever you happen to do that at, make sure you tap in to make sure you don't miss an episode. I also like to let you know that today's show is sponsored by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code all lowercases LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Shout out to the everydayers for tuning in every single day. We are eternally grateful for you. And if you're not an everydayer, you can be. All you got to do is tune in every day, and I'll call you an everydayer. All right. A lot of questions. We're trying to get a lot of these questions. We're like almost 1/8, almost, since now there's 17 games. It's not quite 1/8, but we're almost 1/8 through the season. And we're trying to answer some questions that we had and concerns that we had. And we're going to continue to do this based on the offseason last year, everything that we wanted to see them do and improve on. So what we're going to talk about today is Mike Caldwell's defense and how they have been playing a lot better. And we're going to try to see if that's sustainable as well. Players who have improved, guys who have stepped up. Has it been the guys that we thought would step up? And do you have any surprises? And then what needs more growth during this season in order for them to be a championship level team as we get to the playoffs? Those are the things that we're going to basically touch on today. But we got to go backwards a little bit first, because shows like today are necessary because we asked a lot of questions in the offseason in which they did not go out on the free agency market and go crazy and ballistic. It was an offseason where they needed help, according to us, our eyes, and our minds, along with what was said by head coach Doug Peterson, that the pass rush for the entire team, the thing that they needed to do was get a better pass rush. And then they proceeded to not do anything about the pass rush to the 5th round of the draft when they drafted Nasir Abdullah from Louisville. So the question is how are they going to improve if they don't add players? Well, it's all about self-development and self-improvement, and guys that they have to get better. And I'm gonna sit there for a minute with that because we're going to see if that's happened. Obviously, if things have gotten better, there have been some improvements, but I kind of believe it or not, I wouldn't want to call it arrogance, but just for the sake of this, I'm going to say it's a little bit of that. I really like the fact that they are hedging their bets. And we talked about that before. In the past, there was always too much of, well, this is all we have until we can find somebody better. It's your job to find somebody better first and not settle for what you already have. You have to go find good people that can play football because other teams are doing it. And there are people out there every single year that can help you. And what makes this so, I wouldn't say easy to do, but what makes me think that it's not as hard as it sounds is because every team has a specific scheme and every team has guys that they're looking for to play in that scheme that are a culture fit. So we hear these words all the time, but these are the things we need to hold, the mirror up to the franchise and those people who are making decisions and say, well, that's why it's easier for you to find someone because there's somebody out there that's tailor-made to fit just for you. I'll give you a perfect example. Not Quentin, but Quentin Williams. Quentin Williams is a very good player for the Jets. He didn't fit what the Jaguars needed. And since he's left, the Jaguars have either signed or drafted 3 off-ball linebackers. That kid's playing very well with the Jets. He wasn't a fit here. He is a fit there. That's what I mean. Somebody else's trash is always somebody else's treasure, and vice versa. So the Jaguars don't have an excuse when it comes to saying, well, we gotta, like they used to say, well, we gotta just have him until we can find somebody to replace him. I'm like, duh, everybody does that, right? So with the Jaguars, they have people in place that they believe are good enough. And when they don't play good enough, you know what they say? They just need to play better. And we need to coach better. So that part of it I like, because it takes out the built-in excuses that we don't have who we need right now. So we just playing with him until we get who we need. No. It's not going to work like that. So that's the reason why I like this. The other part of it is it lessens the scope of where do you think the improvement is going to come from? Because it ain't coming from outside of the building. It has to come from within the building. Doug always says this thing, and you hear it in press conferences, especially after losses. He says, we got to figure out how to get people in the right place to be successful. You hear it a lot. We got to put people where they're supposed to be, basically, in a nutshell. And I just think that that's a very good way of looking at things, because when things don't go the way everyone wants them to go, the first thing you can do is say, hey, that's on me. That's on us. And I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing for the present, and it's a good thing for the future. It's also a good thing for your mental as a fan, because there's nothing like not being successful and then not having an answer at all. It's like you got to come take that every week when you don't have an answer at all of how it's going to improve and how it's going to get better. So we're going to look at players in segment 2 that I believe who have improved. Everyone knows how I feel about Trayvon. Everybody knows how I feel about Andre Cisco. There's one guy in particular that I thought needed to really, really improve when he came into this season. And so far, so good. And that is number 33, Devin Lloyd. Devin Lloyd, in my opinion, has been way, way better than he was last year, and that was necessary. We'll talk about his particular improvement. We'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. But first, I have to let you know about our partners at eBay. And they've teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Vinny has picked out for us this week on eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Ravens rookie wideout Zay Flowers had a fine debut in week 1 before a modest week 2, but Flowers will go into full bloom while cruising into a big game on a weak Colts secondary at home in week 3. Flowers will be schemed open well as Baltimore's new look passing game continues to find more life under Todd Monken and with quarterback Lamar Jackson. Video from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows the championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Now, I have a personal experience with eBay, and I'm going to tell you right now, man, they are telling the absolute truth. Those parts fit, they're perfect, and ain't no need to ask for no more money back, because eBay is the truth. Keep your ride or die alive at ebay.com/motors. That's right. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, and exclusions do apply. All right, man, keeping it going here on Locked On Jaguars, and as promised, I'm going to talk about Devin Lloyd is one of those people on the defense that has improved tremendously. First of all, the second-year player, who's a first-round pick out of Utah, seemed to struggle last year with a few things, tackling in space. He never struggled with getting off of his blocks. He never struggled with filling and spilling and all of that stuff. But he did struggle a little bit in coverage, and he did struggle a little bit out in space. And you wanted to see the improvement. So have we seen it? Yes. What have the reasons been? Don't know. I'm not a coach, but I can tell you this. He looks way more confident. He really looks like a guy that has a navigation system on. He looks like someone who isn't looking around to be told what to do. There were times last year when Foye Oluwakan was telling him where to line up and things like that, and he looked confused at the start of a play. He seems very deliberate now. He seems very, very much in tune with exactly what he has to do, with where he has to be. And he's an asset. He's a guy you don't want coming off of the field because he is a jumbo linebacker. He's, a little over 6'3", maybe 6'3 and a half. I think he's close to 6'4", but that's just me. And he goes somewhere, depending on what day it is, man, he might be 240, 245 or something like that. But I think he's listed at like 238, but he runs. He's a little bit of a long strider, but he turns all of that stuff into exactly what you want. You see a guy flying around the field. You see a guy being athletic. The main thing is with certain positions, you notice them when you don't notice them. And this year, we're not noticing him trailing plays. We're not noticing him lumbering behind. We're not noticing him missing what it seems like easy things. It looks like the game has really, really slowed down for Devin Lloyd. It's funny how that happens, though, because there's another guy in Green Bay who had a similar size and athletic profile named Quay Walker, who was chosen right around the same time. And he's woken up too. He has. I've noticed that in the Packer games that I watched. Quay Walker, I think he even scored a touchdown already. So, yeah, this is second year, man, and this is the time when these guys, and it was a little bit scary for Devin Lloyd because Devin Lloyd is like 23, 24 years old. Last year as a rookie. So you were wondering, like, okay, this is not an immaturity thing. What is it? He's played a lot of football. What is it? I just still think guys have to get used to what they're asked to do in the NFL. And in college, you can kind of hide a little bit. Like you can miss a tackle, but you can make up for it like immediately on the next play. Well, the NFL, that doesn't go that way. Everybody's good. If you miss something, people are still talking about the missed tackle that Trey Herndon had the other day that led to a short fourth down goal to go, not goal to go, but short. It was 4th and 1 when it should have been 4th and 10. And Kansas City should have punted. But they didn't. He kept the drive going, and they ended up scoring a touchdown. Those are the type of things that folks don't seem to forget. And Devin Lloyd had some of those moments last year where folks didn't seem to forget. Now, he improved because last year was during the Kansas City game where he was replaced in the lineup. This year, not so much. So whatever it is, if they thought that they were going to exploit him, if they thought that they were going to go and get after him, that didn't happen. So he has definitely improved. The defense as a whole has improved. They had some issues, of course, with Anthony Richardson running the ball in week 1, on extended plays. They had an issue the other day where there was an extended play, and it looked like they were closing in on Mahomes, going to make him throw the ball, and he lobs it over, and there's a dude sitting there wide open. I think it was Sky Moore, who was wide open right when the Jaguars were really, really trying to get the ball back and try to make a game-winning drive. So some of those busted plays or some of those scramble routes, yeah, they'll have to still figure that out. The Chiefs are just very good, and Mahomes is just very good, so that won't happen every single week. But so far, so good for Mike Caldwell in the defense, and Devin Lloyd has been a big part of that. Now, I'll name some other guys. They aren't surprises. I think Trayvon has played well. I was listening to the radio yesterday, and they were saying, well, he didn't do anything. Yeah, he did. He got 2 straight holding penalties. 2. And those things are those are good. The one holding penalty, he was going to sack Mahomes. I think it was a strip sack too, because Mahomes was actually looking to his left. And Trayvon was rushing to his right, and he had beaten Juwan Taylor badly. Taylor actually had to grab him and hold him and pull him to the ground. He was 1.5 steps away, and Mahomes held onto the ball even longer. He was 1.5 steps away from absolutely burying Patrick Mahomes and possibly causing a fumble right inside of the Jacksonville Jaguars red zone. They would have had the ball, and something like that could have sparked the team. So, while we talk about Juwan Taylor, he got beat up on pretty good here. That was a play where he probably actually made the better play to prevent that from happening at that point. So, kudos to him. And I do still believe that even in that sequence, the Jaguars, I think, did they get the ball back? Or that may have been one of those drives where the Chiefs actually kept going on the third and a mile. I think that was the play. On third and a mile, the guy breaks a tackle and runs up, and then they only need 1 yard. And of course, the Chiefs went for it and made it. But the defense has definitely improved. Trayvon, along with Devin Lloyd, 2 second-year players. Andre Cisco has been as good as I thought he was going to be. Could have had 2 picks Sunday, but he did end up getting a spectacular interception after he let one go through his hands. But he's been all over the field. He's been playing well. Rayshon Jenkins has played well. Darius Williams has played extremely well, in my opinion, batting down balls and being Johnny on the spot and being a real sure tackler. Tyson Campbell has been good with the exception of one play that he had the other day. I think the team does miss Devon Hamilton because he was going to provide an extra layer of pressure up the middle and stoutness along the defensive front. So there's some improvement that needs to make. But even without him, the fact that they aren't really big up front, with the exception of Foley Fadakazi, that hasn't shown up in games. They've been able to stop the run. They've been able to do whatever they needed to do. So any size issues or girth issues that they have, or we thought that they could have had on a defensive line, they're not having that right now at all. They're not having that right now at all. It's safe to say that if without that defense, the Jags would be 0-2 because their offense took a long time to get going against the Colts. The Jaguars would be 0-2 at this point, and they're not. They're 1-1. I think the defense needs to step up again this week, even though everybody's focusing on the offense and who's calling plays and all of that rigmarole. I do think those guys need to make sure that they step up this week in order to keep that momentum going and don't let up just because everyone's focusing on the other side of the ball. You don't earn anything from doing it the last couple of weeks and then saying, okay, we're going to take a week off. Nope, doesn't work like that. You got to keep on getting it. But I'll tell you what needs to happen. They're not where they need to be yet, but they are going to be. And I'll tell you how they're going to get there and who is going to help them. And it's not just Devon Hamilton, somebody else. I'll tell you who that person is on the other side in just a second. First, we got to let you know about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the absolute truth, and you need to check it out. It's the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. We are the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. I barely missed it the other day, man. I missed it by like 1.5 yards. I was 1.5 yards away from having my PrizePick 5-team parlay actually make it, but it did not. But you don't have to have that problem, man. You can just study a little bit more, but you have to go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Now, make sure you use LockedOnNFL and do it in all lowercases. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL, and that is your code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks. Download the app and go to prizepicks.com. All right, man, we're running along here on the third and final segment of this episode of Locked On Jaguars. Listen, here's the deal. The defense has played well. They have to continue to play well, and I think they have to get just a little bit better as they make the stretch run. Now, there's the expectation that the offensive line is going to improve, right? Because Doug Peterson sort of indicated yesterday that line play all around the league is kind of shaky right now, and that over time you'll see that improve. He didn't quite say it that way, but I'm thinking that that's kind of what he means, is that over time things are going to get better. So we'd assume that happens with every part of the team, especially the ones where they have a lot of guys who have to play in unison, right? And the defensive line is like that. If you don't think the defensive line is one of those units, you're crazy, because the defensive line, they do a lot of stunting. And sometimes you'll see, if you watch the tape, you'll see one guy take on a couple of blockers while he's going another way totally, knowing he's not going to make the play, but he's eating up space. And then one of those linebackers comes flying through where he was and where he moved the guys from, or there's sort of a twist with the defensive lineman. So guys are really sacrificing themselves in order for the greater good of the team to be able to make a play. And a lot of times that stuff doesn't show up statistically. So we assume that they're going to be like the Temptations. We always say that, or the Four Tops, and they're going to all get their movements down. Even when you go to the dry practices in the off season and they teach those guys to come off and get off, they all do it at the same time. They do it at the same time, and their movements jive with each other. So how can they improve? And I know I'm talking about the front because I think that's where the main improvement is going to come from, because they're going to get a couple of bodies back, hopefully. I don't know the medical condition of Devon Hamilton. I don't know what his prognosis is. I am not a doctor. I do think that there is still hope, though, that he does at some point get healthy and come back before the year is out. I haven't seen him. Somebody told me they saw him and they say he lost some weight because he was dealing with some sort of infection. But hopefully that gets taken care of, first of all, for him and his family first. But then for the benefit of the team, if he comes back and he's able to give them anything, that'll be even great. But another person is Juwan Smoot. Juwan Smoot was re-signed by the team. He is still rehabilitating or getting himself back into shape from a torn Achilles. But he'll be back. And if we know anything about Juwan Smoot's going to bring it every single play, whether he's lining up at a little bit of a 3 technique, a big end position, or if he's doing a little bit of that pass rusher. And I sort of think that that's what they're waiting on, because the team hasn't made any moves to try to go out and get a veteran. Josh Allen is having a little bit of a shoulder issue, but he's sort of day-to-day, and they think he'll be fine. But you saw K'Lavon Chaisson. You saw him get his first sack the other day, right, as the first reserve in. And then you saw Abdullah, the rookie, also playing some. Now, don't get it twisted. There's still a videotape that I did retweet or repost, if you will, on X, going around of K'Lavon Chaisson getting slung around like a rag doll. So he got the sack. He's an effort guy, but he's still very, very easy for teams to kind of dislodge and get him out of the way. So I think the reason why they haven't moved on it is because, one, they love their special teams guys, and I think Abdullah and Chaisson both play special teams. But I also think there's anticipation of help is on the way with Juwan Smoot. I think they're going to use him in various positions, whether he has a hand on the ground, in some positions where he's standing on the sideline. Where he's standing up on the outside in sort of a Sam position. But even if it's with hands down, if you notice and you watch the games, the Jaguars, I wouldn't say it was 50-50, but it was more than you probably would have imagined, that they had guys, those guys in four down linemen. I would like to ask, and it's hard to ask these questions when you've seen improvement, but I would like to ask, I notice on a lot of tape that I watch, and I even watched this from Chris Jones, that when you're watching it from behind the quarterback, one of the things that I've seen some teams do with their ends is they go straight up the field. If you watch the Chris Jones cut-ups and breakdown from when he pressured Trevor, and they're all over social media, I want you to watch where he is lined up to in relation to the hash marks. And then watch his steps and watch how far up the field he goes while staying on those hash marks before he ever turns his body and unsquares his shoulders towards the line, away from the line of scrimmage before he starts to engage the tackle. I want you to watch that, and then I want you to watch the Jaguars players do it. And I want you to notice what I noticed. Do those guys come in at an angle? Or do they, when they initially start their pass rush, do they do what Chris Jones does, where he goes straight up? He went up the field like 4 yards straight up, and he forced that lineman to turn before he turned into him and was able to address him and disengage him and go get the quarterback. So it looks like our guys are already angled in, and they're not just lined up square to the line of scrimmage. And they get a running start, and they run right towards whoever it is they're playing, or they try to come at him at an angle. I want you to watch and see, and then maybe if I get a chance to, especially after I start going back to a lot of these press conferences, and I'm not right now, and you guys know I'm scheduled for hip replacement surgery, and I can't do a lot of walking. So I'll have that in a couple of weeks, and then maybe a few weeks after that, I'll be able to walk better. And I want to ask them, is there a difference or why those guys are doing it differently? Because it looks like from what I've seen, our guys are lined up at an angle and they're coming in from an angle as opposed to running upfield and then turning. And I think sometimes when you do that, it puts the offensive lineman at a disadvantage if you decide to do it that way. So it'll be interesting to see. I think they may do it more from a 4-man front than a 3-man front. When they're in a 3-man front, that means they have 5 guys up on the line and the guys are out wider. And I know they're trying to prevent running lanes because they're so wide. And maybe that's the reason that they do it. But it'll be very, very interesting. But no complaints. So far, so good. With Mike Caldwell and his defense, the one thing that it doesn't appear guys are confused anymore. They're getting off the field a lot better than they have in the past. It's just that a couple of plays always stick out to you. It's when it's 3rd and 23 and they get 22 yards, or it's 3rd and 19 and they get 18. That kind of bothers you, man. It's like you're supposed to the special teams are supposed to be putting their helmet on, taking the last squeeze of water when they see 3rd and long distance like that. And I'm not going to complain too much because the Chiefs were 4-13 on 3rd down. So it's not like the Jaguars weren't getting them off the field. And it's not like the Jaguars didn't hold them to 17 points. So far, so good with a rookie quarterback, but then you got the standard bearers in week 2 on offense, and you actually held them to only 17 points as well. So far, so good. They're getting pressure. We want to see more of it. They're really, really committing turnovers. That's one of the things that they wanted to work on a lot. And it's one of the things that has shown up, and they are doing a fabulous job at getting that ball loose, intercepting balls, making the ball hit the ground with their physical tackling, coming in, stripping. So whatever they did in the offseason to boost up those turnovers is going on. We want to see continued improvement. If you want to see some continued improvement on our part too, check out the Locked On NFL podcast. Today's version is out, and it includes me along with James Rapine from the Locked On Bengals podcast. But every day on that podcast is great with great hosts from around the Locked On NFL network that will give it to you like you can't get it anywhere else. So make sure you make that your next watch here. Like and subscribe also to the Locked On NFL podcast that's on YouTube as well. All right, man, you guys take care of each other. We'll be back with a crossover edition. Crossover edition will be tomorrow with the guys from Houston. Interested to see who comes, but I know you guys are going to enjoy it. Until then, take care. We'll see you next time here on Locked On Jaguars.